This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law. I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey, y'all, and welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential Podcast. I'm Molly.
Hey, I'm Pam.
And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. You know we'd love to hear from you. We always do, and we appreciate those folks who do reach out all the time. If you have a comment, we'd love to see it, or a suggestion about a case, that as well. Well, today's episode is called Oh, What an Evil Pair, Brendan Banfield and His Brazilian Au Pair. So we're going to talk about this case. It's been fascinating.
It is crazy.
Stems from Virginia. A jury deliberated some 9 hours before finding former IRS agent Brendan Banfield guilty of double murder. Prosecutors argued that the 40-year-old father wanted to get rid of his wife, 37-year-old nurse Christine Banfield, to be with the family's au pair, 25-year-old Juliana Peres Magalhaes. And Pam says her name so much better. Magalhaes. That sounds lovely.
I don't know if it's
when
right,
I said
but
it didn't sound very good. So Peres Magalhaes was initially charged with second-degree murder for helping to plot the murders with her married lover back in 2023. But she was offered a deal in exchange for her testimony against him. And y'all, testify she did. She gave them all the details about how she helped Brendan when he lured 39-year-old Joseph Ryan to the couple's home by pretending to be his wife on a fetish website. What's that, you say? Well, this is where it gets even weirder. So prosecutors said he lured the man to their home for what Ryan believed to be a consensual fake rape scenario with the plan to frame the stranger for his wife's murder. So we're going to jump into all those details that came out in this trial. A fascinating one it is, as salacious it is, as it is some of these details. It really just boils down to a greedy, selfish killer, in my opinion.
Hedonistic.
2 killers, really.
Yeah. Hedonistic, lustful.
Absolutely. All right. But first, we want to talk about the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of news anchor Savannah Guthrie, who disappeared from her home. Boy, this has been a tragic case. And so many people, I think, are praying for her, for Savannah, for Nancy, for their family, in hopes that they find some answers. But it's a nightmare situation. 84-year-old lady disappeared in the middle of the night from her Arizona home. She had her pacemaker attached to her watch. It stopped basically connecting to her pacemaker. And people are following this trail of clues that we're learning about in the media, but nobody really knows what happened to her. Had a fake ransom note, somebody arrested for sending a fake ransom note. So it's going to be interesting to see who really is responsible for Nancy's disappearance.
It is a whole bunch of things like that. And, you know, the things that we all have at our homes too, like a Ring doorbell or something, they said that was detached and someone had disabled that, they say. And like you said, the pacemaker. And then where she lives in that community where the topography is a lot of scratchy cacti and stuff like that. I think that's the plural of that. But, and the other kind of trees and stuff around there, those are good hiding places. And it's also so dark there. I mean, unreasonably dark for us, but we don't live in that neighborhood, which is a dark community. People move there for that very thing because they can stargaze out there in
Beautiful
Arizona.
Without the light pollution.
Right. And we experience it after a hurricane or something. You can go out in your own front yard, and when we don't have our lights and stuff, you can see the sky so clearly.
Yes, I have a lot of questions about it too. I know everybody does. It's a riveting case in a lot of ways, because not the least of which you have she's the mother of a famous woman who does a beautiful job as a news anchor, Savannah Guthrie. I'm a fan. Yeah. But yeah, it's heartbreaking. And then that Ring camera, apparently, even though the camera was turned off, because the subscription, I think, had been allowed to expire. So even though the camera was turned off, it still showed activity at certain times. And you just can't see it. But it's all around that same time that basically the pacemaker stopped syncing with her Apple Watch.
Right.
And you know, God only knows what's going on with this mama. And I just pray that she is okay. And I know that's what everybody's praying for too. But, you know, none of us know what happened to her. But if I were to make just some talk about theories that are already out there. Again, not an expert. I know you and I are not investigators. And we just, join everybody else in hoping that there's a positive outcome to this. But in light of that, a couple of different theories that I've heard is, some folks think, well, it could potentially be someone that had it out for Savannah Guthrie for whatever reason and targeted her mom, whether it was for money, whether it was for revenge, whatever the reason may be. Maybe didn't like her politics or what they perceived was her politics, or didn't like how she talked on air. Who knows? Maybe it had nothing to do with Savannah. Maybe it had everything to do, maybe it's closer to home.
Right.
Maybe it has something to do with family members being involved. Maybe something happened and we just don't know the full story yet.
Well, last night, before I was going to bed, it was around midnight, they were showing that there were deputies at Annie, the sister's house there. And, one thing is, hey, while you got your mama here, love them to pieces, because this could be so many different things. We got Bitcoin in here because they're not asking for dollars, because that can be traced. And I'm pretty much thinking some Bitcoin probably can. I mean, you would think like somebody that has like a mastermind would be saying, give me jewels or something, just something like that, or maybe gold or silver. I don't know. But it's just so bizarre, because this could be people taking advantage of, oh, look at that going on there. I'm going to jump in here and create a red herring. So this is very serious, but our mamas are here for X amount of time, and when they're gone, they're gone.
I know. Well, I certainly hope that Nancy is not gone. I hope that they do find her.
Right.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to watch that, and we'll bring you an update as we hear about it, just like I know you'll be watching for it too. Now, turning back to Brendan Banfield and his double murder conviction with the help from his au pair. So, Pam, I know you've been studying, you followed the trial. How did this all unravel? Did police know immediately that Brendan Banfield and his au pair were potential suspects, or did they buy his story initially that this supposed intruder came in as something his wife had arranged in a fake rape scenario, and that he and the au pair happened to catch them at it, thought it was real, so he shoots this young man, and then supposedly he blames this young man for stabbing his wife. So that's his story initially. Did police buy it off the bat? Did they?
I don't think they bought it off the bat, but they'll never show you that. You got 4 grown people in a room, 2 are dead and 2 are standing there, and a bedroom upstairs. What's going on? So they want to find out stuff, so they have to look into investigating. So I don't think they made too many decisions. They're going to let the circle talkers talk. That's Brendan, big old man baby.
Yeah, and then what he said didn't necessarily match up with what the evidence, especially the blood splatter.
Right, because what he said was that this Mr. Ryan, Joe Ryan, was in there and assaulting his wife, and he came in as the hero, to protect her. So anyway, he shoots Joe Ryan in the head, and he's still moving behind Brendan. And Juliana, the au pair, she shoots him in the chest. And then they had telling Joe, who was a U.S. Marine before, he was a physical fitness instructor, and he was in fitness, told him the address, what to wear, what to bring, what to say.
All while he was pretending to be his wife, Christine, on this website, this fetish website.
A submissive woman, because that's the way he painted her, and that even if she said no, don't stop, and all this kind of weird stuff, and told him exactly how to come in. So he did. And they had, the au pair had, under this guise, was going to take the little 4-year-old girl to the zoo.
And for those folks who don't know, the 4-year-old is the daughter of the couple.
Right.
Brendan and Christine Banfield.
Right. And so she goes, oh my gosh, we forgot the lunches, because they were going to be there all day, because it was a Smithsonian type of zoo. And so she comes back, and that's when she said, oh my goodness, there's a car in the driveway.
So she thought that was her excuse, that she had forgotten the lunches that Christine had packed and made for their day at the zoo, not knowing that these two had plotted to basically murder her and blame it on someone else. But so she comes back, says, I don't have the lunches. And lo and behold, look what's happening.
So she texts or calls Brendan, who happens to be at a McDonald's, and he's in there, and the McDonald's cameras show him. I call this the Mac defense, because he's in there fooling around, he says, with his app, McDonald's app for free food or whatever, and they see him in there just for about 7 minutes, and he's in the bathroom for about 7 minutes, and people are like, what's going on? So he's at a nearby McDonald's. He came back rather quickly. And so they go upstairs. That is how all 4 of them get upstairs in the bedroom.
Okay. And the little girl the whole time is down in the basement.
Yeah. So the au pair wouldn't have left her in the basement if she was doing her job. Because I think over here we think of au pair as it's a fancy type of thing, because some of us over here may have nannies or babysitters, and we don't have governesses and stuff like that. But au pair is sort of like a exchange student type of thing. It's usually people that are young, 18 to 30, and it's usually women. And they have schools for them in some of the foreign countries. And this particular au pair, Juliana, is from Brazil. So they come over here in exchange for room, board, and for a stipend. And basically, I think I've said this before, but au pair means on par. We are equals. We're family. So that's what an au pair in a traditional sense would be. You don't get Miss Body Yaddy Yaddy from Ipanema or Brazil or wherever they're from and get her come on in your house and you work all the time. Your husband works at home in the basement, and then here she is. And then what could go wrong?
I can't even imagine. Well, that was a great point that I thought the prosecutor determined, because he was trying to minimize their relationship, boil it down to just sex, if you will, that was meaningless to him, that he would not have made this elaborate plot to have his wife killed to be with her because she wasn't that important to him. But the prosecutor, I thought, absolutely did a great job of blowing that out of the water and said, quote, he was in love with Juliana. He can pretend that this was a fling and affair. He'd had them before, no big deal. He was in love with Juliana. This was from the prosecutor, Jenna Sands. And she said he was afraid of losing her. He needed to get rid of his wife so that they could be together, so that they could marry, so that they could have those babies that he was picking out names for, end quote. So he and Juliana were already picking out names for babies.
Yep.
He had basically moved her into the master bedroom, right? Not long after his wife had been killed. And then those were some of the other things that I believe you were saying police noticed. He had taken framed pictures of him and the au pair of Juliana, basically replaced the wife as if she'd never been there.
Oh, yeah. And one thing, when in her bedroom, a before picture, they could see in her closet she had a Brazilian soccer jersey in there. It's real easy to see. And then it magically ends up in the master bedroom, and there next to a beautiful red dress that was in the previous closet as well. So all this stuff there, and there were condoms and 2 water bottles on the nightstands and all kind of things there, and some other things they didn't mention. But he was in love with her, or they were going to concerts to New York City to celebrate New Year's Eve. But what she would do, she would post them on the internet, but his stupid face would have one of those big old crazy yellow emojis, like, or something stupid right there. And you're like, you don't think we know who this Pillsbury Doughboy 40-year-old man is, that you're his au pair?
So Christine had no idea that they were seeing each other? I mean, I'm sure she would have recognized his body, even with some stupid emoji face over his stupid head.
I know it. But I don't think she looked at that. Because here's the way they did. Christine was at one point a SANE nurse, sane nurse, sexual assault nurse examiner. So she is talking with people that have been through probably the worst thing in the world that's happened to them. So this, first of all, wouldn't have even been a fantasy or anything she would have had. And what I get so daggum mad about is now he's got her name latched to all this weirdo fetish stuff forever and ever and ever. And we don't get to find out that she was such a kind person, a go-along-to-get-along person, kind of made herself small so he could be so arrogant and narcissistic and big. And at one point, he had got triple-paned windows for his house.
So what, he could drown out the noise?
Yeah, probably. You know, but nobody needs triple paned around your whole house. So there's all kind of this questionable stuff. And he's like, well, I just wanted that. And I mean, that may be, but it looks kind of suspicious. But he might have
had a reason for wanting it. Yeah, that was definitely suspicious. Well, Christine Banfield ends up being stabbed 7 times in the neck. And you and I were talking about this. So if this was their plan, to lure this guy, Joe Bryan, to the house, set him up to do this fake rape, which he thought was part of the plan, that this Christine was willing, which, by the way, how even more insulting, degrading, and just like salt in the stab wounds, if you will, to do a fake rape on a woman who helps women for a living, if you will, who've actually been through this in a legitimate way. That guy is a sick mofo, in my opinion, Brendan Banfield. But I do wonder, like you and I were talking, who died first? Did he kill Joe?
Yeah, Joe definitely did. He got 2 gunshot wounds, and Christine's standing there. And they had told Joe, now keep in mind, at night they're just giggling, sitting there together, making this fetish profile with all this, bring enough, do this, do that. I mean, sick MFers, And so here he comes with that. So Brendan takes the knife that Joe brought and he starts stabbing Christina.
So she didn't know until he turns the knife on her that this was all part of their plot.
Right.
She's probably just like, oh my gosh, I've just been attacked by this stranger. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for stopping this. What is happening? And then boom, just like that, her husband turns on her.
Right. And this is the part that makes me almost want to throw up because I know that's what my sister saw. You're betrayed by somebody intimate. And here's what I was thinking. All right, we know they got a gun. He even took Juliana to shooting ranges to practice many times. And so her gun, the second gun, was in the bathroom, the one she needed. So why didn't he just shoot her and be kind that way, if there's such a thing as being kind? But to stab someone, to cut their throat, to feel their flesh under your hand like that, you got to be some sort of sick person, because he could have shot her.
Yeah, he could have. And instead, he stabs the mother of his child while that little girl is downstairs. Thought she was going to have a day at the zoo, and instead she was just all being drug along and part of a plot to kill her mommy.
Yeah, and with a man and a 25-year-old, at that point probably early 20s, some sort of something, but sitting there giggling, making up baby names and stuff. You don't make baby names up with somebody that you gonna throw away. This old circle talker, big-headed boy, I don't like him. I just don't like him at all. He sat up there and just fumbled around and just looked so stupid as hell.
Like he was too goofy to have plotted this? Is that what he was trying to say?
Looked like a duh. But he said, basically, Juliana, the Brazilian bombshell, she came on to me. That's what he said. And he said, I ain't think about it. This happens all the time, baby. Basically, all this is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, he did take the stand and gave his testimony, and he called the allegations, quote unquote, absolutely crazy, and said his affair with Juliana was just that, nothing more. So this happened on February 24th, 2023, 3 years ago this month. And after the au pair called him, like you were saying, to alert him about the stranger in the home, he said, y'all, he just went up to the bedroom with his gun drawn, found his wife naked with Ryan, and that she called out, Brendan, he has a knife. Quote, I was extremely terrified, Brendan Banfield told the jury. I don't think I've ever been more panicked in my life, end quote. So that's when he said he fired at Ryan, striking him in the head. And then that's what I guess he kept moving and Juliana shot him. And then he picks up the knife that Ryan brought to fake rape his wife and then ends her life with 7 stab wounds to the neck. I'm just so thankful that jury saw through his BS.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Juliana's too, because he was real quick to tell everybody, I am a federal agent. He doesn't say with the IRS, because he was an IRS pencil pusher kind of agent before.
Trying to make himself sound like he was with the FBI or something.
He's armed now. That's that Barney Fife syndrome that happens when some people get a gun.
Well, when you said he was taking her to get shooting lessons, I thought, well, that was probably just some sort of phallic and fantasy in his mind to watch his hot side piece firing a gun. It was probably just too much testosterone and phallic symbols for him. He was just exploding with excitement.
I can see that.
Gross.
I can see that with him, especially with him, even on one of the 911 calls when Juliana calls and then he gets on the phone. He goes, I'm a federal agent. This is my house. It doesn't say my name.
I came up with my gun drawn. Why would you do that before you even know what's happening?
Right. He said, I shot him like that. So I'm like, you admitted to shooting him. But I mean, every time people would say that was a thing, that I'm a federal agent, I'm armed, I'm this, that, and the other. Most of us ain't too happy to see the IRS anyway about nothing. But you ain't going to need a gun. We're going to maybe need a pencil and eraser or something and maybe some money or what have you. But we don't need you doing that. So in other words, he's an investigator. So his mind thinks kind of crazy like that. But to think that this would come out right, you have got to be sick. And this young person, I'm not making excuses for her, she's just happier than hell to be in the United States and have a job, and this old 40-year-old man falling all over herself, looking like a damn fool, and she here, why wouldn't she drag him along. I mean, he's dumb enough to do it.
I know. Well, hold that thought. We want to take a quick moment to thank Joe Zarzar of Zarzar Law for supporting Gulf Coast Confidential. Joe is a personal injury attorney here in the Pensacola area, but he handles cases all throughout Florida and Alabama. And we just want to thank him for being there for victims. That's what we try to do here on this show, is be a voice for the voiceless. And that's what Joe does every single day. And his staff is there to answer your questions. If you've been hurt through no fault of your own, maybe there was a car accident, maybe some concerns about medical malpractice. So if you have any questions and you're looking for a personal injury attorney, give him a call, and you can check him out at zarzarlaw.com. Well, turning back to this show, it is a shame that this man had to destroy his entire family, and it cost him his wife's life. It cost that little baby her mama and her family, because her dad is now going to prison. And the only person who really kind of came out smelling like a rose, if you will, not entirely, but is Juliana. So as part of her plea deal, she pled guilty to manslaughter, and she got time served for testifying against her lover, Brendan Banfield. And she told the jury that he wanted to get rid of his wife. And this was going back to October of 2022, saying, quote unquote, at first, I thought he was joking, end quote. But she testified that she helped him catfish Ryan on the fetish website to lure him to the house. She also told the court that Brendan said he wanted to marry her and have children with her, and they didn't want to divorce his wife because why? Quote, she would have more money than he would, end quote, and because he wanted custody of the couple's daughter. So that is always what so many of these murderous husbands and partners come back to. They don't want to part with anything. Yeah. They got a new side piece. They got the house, they got the kid, but they don't want to cut a big check. And somehow this woman who, it wasn't enough that she married him. It wasn't enough that she took care of their home. It wasn't enough that she worked full time to help other people. It wasn't enough that she was a good mommy and gave him a child. He just wasn't hitting it like he wanted to hit it anymore, sexually and in the bedroom. Right. So he has this 25-year-old that's making him feel like he's big man on campus and young again, some sort of midlife crisis, it sounds like, but he's going to destroy all of that just because he doesn't want to cut a check.
Right. But everywhere you go, there you are. He's still got that messed up mind. And people that think like that, he should not be around a snake or even a worm or anything with that kind of thinking. You would never get a child if I had anything to do with it. And I mean, to think like that, there are people, we know there are. I got one in my family. My nephew's a murderer, murdered my sister. There are people, and they are close to us, and we have to keep pushing back. When we know people are doing this kind of stuff, he never needs to get out of prison.
Right.
And Juliana, you know, she basically changed her story, and they were writing love letters back and forth, and she's like, I will never turn on you, and blah, they're trying to get me if I cooperate, and da-da-da. Well, eventually, guess what? Producers from Dateline, one of them I think named Josh, she said they were putting money on her books and stuff, so she's kind of semi-promised them something later. And basically, all that's going to happen to her, there may be a little more than time served, but that was the carrot they put out there. Basically, when she gets done with that, even if it's a year, 2, 3, whatever, she just gets deported back to Brazil, and she can live happily ever after.
That's unbelievable. But at least they did get her testimony to put him away. And this is all from his brain, it sounds like.
Right.
And for folks who haven't watched the story of Pam's nephew, Brandon Adelot, and what he did to her sister, Sharon, his own mother, you can catch out Mommy Killer. And we talk about that. Sadly, Brandon was found not guilty by reason of insanity. So in the eyes of the law, he's not technically a murderer, but he is a killer. And he used a knife on his mom, which is just sick and horrific. It was a very brutal way to go. So anytime we do cover these cases where certainly a woman, a mommy, is attacked with a knife, it's just horrendous. I mean, it is the most personal way to kill someone. You really have to be coming at it with a personal vendetta.
Right.
And he claimed he heard voices. And in this case, the only voices Brendan Banfield was hearing were apparently from his penis. Go ahead and kill this woman. She wants our checkbook. She wants our daughter. I want my new piece of ass. I don't want to part with any of those things.
Definitely. And women all come on to me, so, I mean, what can I do?
Yeah, well, he can just be a federal agent behind bars, former federal agent.
He was, what I was thinking too, and when he's writing all this BDSM and fetish stuff, that has to be in your sick effing mind to write that. And he kept posing as a submissive female.
I wondered about
Enjoy that in prison.
You can be
Role play that, bro.
Right. Well, I thought, and speaking of downplaying, that was kind of what the defense team pushed at the trial, that they were like, catfishing? What? That's not a very thorough investigation. Why did y'all decide, where did you come up with this conclusion? So his attorney, John Carroll, claimed that it was Juliana who changed her story so she could, quote unquote, secure herself a deal that benefited her, end quote. And then he also said that Brendan Banfield didn't have to testify, but he did because he was trying to, quote unquote, get the truth out there, Pam. And he basically, and then I thought this was one of my favorite quotes that the defense attorney said, quote, "Is it reasonable after a 6 to 8 week affair that someone is going to try to get rid of their companion of 19 years, wife of 12 years? Is that reasonable?" Carroll asked the jury, quote, "You heard from my client. He thinks it's absurd," end quote. Well, it is absurd, but that's exactly what he did,
Right. Right.
He found a new girl and he was like, I don't want to give this up. This one's a snapping one.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I'll take it to go.
He did get it to go, and they both are gone. But he was something else when he's testifying. It was painful to look at this man and watch him. I mean, he's got a little like suit and tie type thing on and just looking crazy and stuff and thinking, he thinks we're taking this for the truth. The jury basically took 9 hours for this 3-week trial to go, bye, boy.
That's so great. I'm so glad that they did. And it sounds like the police just did a great job with the investigation. Now, it went on for months and months. Again, they started plotting this back in 2022. They executed this plan in February of 2023, but it wasn't until 2024 that I think they ended up being charged. So police really took their time. And it was a lot of that physical evidence that basically undercut their story of what happened. But they were still living their lives.
Oh, yeah.
There was no tomorrow.
No. And it was certain things like blood spatter and things like that, because the way that if he's stabbing her, it can't look like him. And they had not only lured Joe, they staged the thing and they had all kind of framing going on. I mean, these people, if they would use their mind for something good, that might be a good thing.
I know. And instead, he's ruined everyone's lives.
I just can't stand to look at him.
Well, Brendan Banfield's sentencing is scheduled for May 8th. He faces the possibility of life in prison without parole, and we'll see what happens. I hope he gets life in prison without parole.
So do I.
Well, we appreciate y'all joining us today. That is it for Oh, What an Evil Pair, Brendan Banfield and his Brazilian au pair. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Roy. Remember, you can listen to more episodes of Gulf Coast Confidential on our YouTube channel and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Just don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, y'all. This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law.